Hello and welcome to another Eurogamer Next-Gen Newscast. It's the 29th of October. This is the third one we're doing. And this week there is a hell of a lot to talk about. So I'm glad to be joined once again by Eurogamer's news editor, Tom Phillips. Say hello, Tom.
Hey there.
Nice blood-splattered top you've got there. Oh, I don't know if
Very
that's
appropriate for Halloween.
I won't tell you what I got up to at lunchtime.
Oh dear. And Eurogamer reporter Emma Kent. Say hello. Is your top makes me think of something like an American football team kind of
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. It's quite sporty, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, a huge amount to talk about. So I'm not going to waste too much time, but it seems like it's becoming an early tradition to ask Emma how you're doing in Hades, or how well you're doing in Hades. I assume very well indeed.
Well, yeah, I got to like the end credits, and I'm just kind of doing post game now and trying to do all the prophecies. I did 3 runs in a row, which was pretty good.
So when you say that, you mean you killed the final boss
3 times in a row? Yeah.
Oh, what, without dying?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad for you. I am glad for you. I'm very happy. Tom, what have you been playing?
What have I been playing?
Something violent, I assume.
Yeah, Pokemon.
How many hours did you spend playing Pokemon Go late last night in the rain and cold?
Well, last night I was playing D&D, which I told you about already, so I won't bore everyone with. But I do have like a daily step count that I try and get to every single day, in real life, not in D&D. And so, yeah, I did go for a walk quite late because I hadn't quite hit my step count for the day. And when I go out, I do play Pokemon Go at the same time because I find walking really boring, but apparently it's good for you. So, yeah, I don't actually know how much, but it was a while. For sure.
So the answer is hours.
He laughs.
He doesn't even know how many hours out roaming the streets last night.
It's good for your health. So
did you get home before the sun came up? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean the depressing thing at the moment is we finish at 5, or we're supposed to finish at 5, right? And then we go out, but it's already pitch black. That's kind of crap. So
yeah, may as well just play Pokemon all the time then, I guess.
Yeah, indoors.
So yeah, a huge amount of next-gen news this week. Things are really ramping up with various embargoes lifting and announcements for various bits and bobs. More has come. I think we know a fair bit more about the PS4 than we did last week as well, which is PS5, sorry, than we did last week. And we've also had unboxing embargoes. Unboxing embargoes are always fun. I never feel like there's too much like news value in them, but people do get a kick out of seeing how they're gonna actually get their console and what it's going to be like to unfold and what's inside. And sometimes there are little nuggets of new info to be found. Emma, you have, and what I think is the underreported Xbox Series S to hand. Obviously all the headlines are around Xbox Series X, but the S goes on sale at the same time, and you have one, which we'll hopefully be seeing being unboxed as we're talking about it. So what is your impression of the console? What do you think of it?
Well, it looks very nice, I guess. I'm allowed to talk about what it looks like. Yeah, it's surprisingly small and kind of a bit weightier than I thought. It's kind of small and compact. I like it so far. I can't really talk about actually playing it yet. But it should be able to fit somewhere in a cabinet easily, which is more than can be said for some of the larger consoles coming out this generation.
Just say PlayStation 5.
Yeah,
fine.
okay, yeah. PlayStation 5. PlayStation 5 demands like a pedestal and a corner of your room on which to sit.
It requires a room.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the Xbox Series S design is quite interesting. It looks like a little speaker to me, the kind of thing that you would plug your phone into before phone speakers became a lot better than they used to be.
I'm looking at it here for sure.
the kind of thing like you
It's
put on
very
your
bold
shoulder,
design.
almost like a boombox.
Exactly. You know, yeah, like in that old film where he's like holds it up.
Yeah. It's quite.
I love the old film for you. It's like, you know, like a black and white film. No, it's like
The Matrix.
I don't know. Yeah. Something that came out in the early noughties.
The important thing for me as well is that you can just like lie it down horizontally and vertically, because I have the base Xbox One and you're not supposed to do that. And that makes it a lot easier for me to store it in my desk, which is good. So
And what do you think of the new Xbox controller?
Yeah, I mean, it's much the same as the old one, to be honest. I think they knew that they had a nice, comfortable design. There's like, the grip feels slightly different. They've got like kind of small grip on the side. It feels comfy, feels nice. Obviously, like the D-pad's changed as well, so it kind of like rotates a little bit. But yeah, I think they just knew they were onto a winner, and they just kind of did some small improvements rather than trying to change the whole thing. And yeah, I like the Xbox controllers quite a lot.
I think the Xbox One controller is my favorite controller ever, probably. I think it feels really, really high quality. It's really robust, and the triggers and the thumbsticks are really have a really good sense of weight to them. And I play PC games with that thing. I prefer to play PC games with that thing generally. I suppose if there's one good thing to come with the Xbox One, it was the controller, but not much else. So the Xbox One S is £250, which is 200 quid cheaper than the Xbox Series X. And I think like everyone sort of understands that it's less powerful, right? That's just part of the part of what you're getting. But what I think has been interesting is that we've learned a little bit more about the differences between Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S versions of the same game recently. There was a story that came out this week about PUBG, for example. And PUBG runs at 60 frames per second on X and PS5, but 30 frames per second on the S. And then we also learned that the Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, or whatever it's called, the Next-Gen Edition essentially, doesn't have ray tracing support on the S, whereas it does on the X and PS5. And I guess my impression of the S was that basically it was going to be the same as X, essentially, but in a lower resolution. And that was actually fine for me because I don't have a 4K telly. But I'm starting to hear now that there are actually some other differences as well. And I was wondering, like, do you think that is a meaningful difference? Do you think people are actually going to start to not complain about the S, but see it as not just a resolution issue, but there's a lot more to it than that? Tom, what's your take on that one?
I'm not a Devil May Cry fan, but I ended up writing that story this week because I think you were out of the office actually, and so I called Virgil Silver Fox because you look like one to me, but I've never played as Virgil, so who am I to judge?
This is what happens when I leave you guys for 5 minutes. I turn my back and you end up writing stuff like that.
Whereas when I leave the office, you have to write about Pokemon, so swings and roundabouts. But anyway,
without the accent.
Yeah. The text that they put out said that, yeah, obviously the S version won't have 4K and it won't have ray tracing, but both X and S will have high frame rates up to 120 frames per second, which, again, I don't play Devil May Cry 5, but I would assume that is the thing that you want to hit, and the 4K and the ray tracing is the thing that you want to lose when it comes to S. So I think the S is incredible price, and you are going to have to make compromises to fit the value of that hardware. And at the end of the day, it's a box that is designed for people who maybe don't have a $2,000 TV sat in their living rooms. So as I hear more about what Series S can do for each game, and I'm seeing that it does vary from game to game, I'm hoping, and maybe like you can speak to this, whereas on Devil May Cry 5, that they've chosen a specific compromise in terms of the 4K visuals to hit that other more important thing, which is high frame rate. And if developers are doing that game by game, case by case basis, then I don't think that the Series S is sort of value proposition is damaged in any way. I think that's just doing what it's supposed to be doing.
I agree with you that the frame rate is the most important thing. Like, as a Devil May Cry fan, the frame rate is of utmost importance. You know, it's a very reactive action game. I think the PUBG announcement was perhaps more surprising. Not getting up to 60 FPS for PUBG on the S was, I thought, not expected, and which is why I thought it was worth covering on the site. And they did. I should point out that they have said that they're exploring an option to sort of update the game to try and get it up to 60 FPS. So I think they sort of realised this is not what people were expecting. And I think what will be crucial is that for the S is that developers do sort of get those high frame rates with games running on S. Otherwise, it could be left behind, really. But in terms of design, I think it looks fantastic. I think it looks really cool, actually. Really small. Really
size is a huge
Yeah.
thing. Like when you put it next to PS5, even next to the X, it's so attractive to have in your living room. I don't have particularly big flat, and I'm kind of glad. I think we all kind of have gotten used to consoles being these big monolithic things, but to someone who doesn't like necessarily have loads of consoles in their room already, I don't know, it's not a very attractive proposition, the PlayStation 5, when you see how big it is. I actually saw a photo this week of the PS5 cardboard box that it comes in, and it's so big that you can fit the Xbox Series X cardboard box inside the PlayStation 5 one. It's enormous.
Do you want to have a look?
Yeah, get it out.
Oh wow, it's taken up the whole screen.
I don't see Wes anymore. I just see PlayStation.
It is massive, to be fair. I think I did a story about this over the weekend because I think there is something interesting to say about what they alert you to on the box. They and they're at the bottom underneath. They have like a little guide for PS4 console users about how to transfer all your stuff across. So I think they acknowledge that this is something that a lot of people are going to want to do, and there's other various things on there as well. But it is big, and of course, oh god, it's heavy.
There it is.
Now I am known to have a massive head. So yeah.
So that actually looks smaller than it is.
Yeah. They should have got me to model it because I have such a massive head.
Your head looks small now, Wes.
It's weird, isn't it? It's so weird.
Yeah, I mean the digital edition obviously doesn't have that growth out to the side for the disk drive.
You make it sound like a cancer.
I think another something that I think Martin said earlier this week is why do you have those sort of pot collar wings either side, which just
I guess you can customize them.
Well, they are definitely going to be sold, right? I mean, that is a little cottage industry they've started. On the inside of those panels, let's lift it up again. So in the inside here, on the inside of these panels, it feels slightly raised, and I really struggle to see this with the naked eye. But they're all little tiny little triangles, squares, X's, and circles, which have been imprinted on it. And on the DualSense controller, it's exactly the same on the back here. Now I'm sort of looking at it, and it's my old man eyes, and I'm squinting to try and see them. Really tough. I had to take a photo of my phone of it and like increase the size of the photo just to see it. But it's a nice little touch from Sony on that front. But yeah, I guess my question is, apart from size, do you care what a console looks like ultimately? Emma, do you care at all, really, at the end of the day, apart from size, what it actually looks like?
I guess I do, depending on where I'm going to put it. If I'm just like shoving it into my desk of like consoles, then not so much, because I can just close it and not look at it. But yeah, if I'm putting it in the living room and it's like on display and people can see it, then yeah, I guess so. I don't want anything too intrusive.
So
yeah.
do you care about how the PS5 looks then? Do you actually care
like,
about design?
I'm not a huge fan of the PS5 design. It's just quite large and loud. Whereas the kind of like Series S is like, I don't know, you could tuck it away and no one will really look at it too much.
Tom,
on a bookshelf. Yeah.
Do you care what your console looks like apart from size?
I mean, if it looks awesome like the GameCube did, purple with a handle, then I absolutely do care.
I regret asking you this question.
I mean, yeah, if I have to look at it, then I do care. And saying, well, apart from size really, really matters when it comes to like putting things in people's TV units. And I've seen a lot of pictures this week from people who've got them early, trying to squeeze them into tiny spaces. And I'm just thinking, you're going to burn your flat down. So,
yeah, I can't wait for that headline in the
really
Sun.
Will be the
PS5 burns flat down. I don't care how these things look. I really don't. Like, I don't remember the last time I looked at my PS4 and I thought about how it looked. Like, I can't even remember the last time I looked at my PS4. I turn it on via the controller wirelessly, and that's just what happens. I care that the PS5 is huge and heavy, but I don't. I mean, we're just gonna get used to how it looks, aren't we?
I think. I mean, you make an interesting point with how little you look at it now, and I just think that 90% of the games I play are downloaded now. I can't remember the last time I actually put a physical disc in either of my console drives. So, yeah, I guess it matters less now than it did back in the day when you were getting up to change like discs and memory cards and controllers.
On the final note on PS5 and the unboxing part of it all, I like the dual sense in terms of how it feels. I think it feels a lot better than the PS4 controller, which I just don't think is very good at all. The thumbsticks feel a bit more what's the right word? Robust, and the triggers do as well. And just overall, I quite like the design. It's got like a cool, like cyborgy look to it that I think works in something small and sleek like this. But I don't think it's as good as the DualSense controller in terms of feel is as good as the Xbox controller. I haven't played anything on it yet, so I don't know about the adaptive controller stuff yet. But just in terms of how it feels in your hands and how it looks, I think it's pretty cool. It's better, which is good. Anyway, moving on. I think one of the things that's sort of characterized this week has been delays, next-gen game delays. Before we get to the big one, the big one, I want to talk about a very for me, surprising delay because of how late in the day it came, which was to Destruction All-Stars. Destruction All-Stars is like an action racing game made by Lucid, which is a Liverpool-based studio that has got some of the people who worked on at Bizarre Creations and even Wipeout back in the day for Sony. And it's like this sort of like I'd say quite Sony Europe-ish PS5 launch title, what it was supposed to be. That was going to cost £70. And we had this chat about game prices last week. And then this week, literally, when's the PS5 out? Like in a couple of weeks. So like a couple of weeks before the PS5 is out, they announced a delay to the game to February 2021, and that it would be included in PlayStation Plus for 2 months, effectively making it free for 2 months. I thought it'd be good to talk to you guys about this delay, why you think it happened, and whether you think it's going to be good for the game. Tom, why do you think this delay happened?
I think if I was working on a £70 launch title that maybe didn't offer up £70 worth of value, or I mean, maybe that's an unfair way to put it, but I guess when you're pricing it at the same value as AAA, like big budget stuff like Demon Souls, it's not of the same weight. And I think if I was working on that game, I wouldn't want that to launch for £70 either. And I also probably wouldn't want it to launch at a time when, as a PS5 exclusive, it doesn't have a huge user base, because online multiplayer games like Destruction All Stars, and I'd put it in the same kind of category as Rocket League, they benefit hugely from having an enormous launch pad. Fall Guys is another great example we saw on PlayStation Plus over the summer. These things hit the stratosphere when they have loads of people, no barrier to access, just jumping straight in. So I think that price and filling out the game's servers made it a really strong argument to delay. And I'm really pleased for the game that it is being delayed. And I don't expect it to ever hit £70, even when it comes off with PlayStation Plus down the line.
No, it can't now.
I think it's absolutely the right decision for the game, for the player base, for the developers. It gives it, a real shot, which I think at £70 and at launch, it probably wouldn't just capture a lot of attention. And it also moves it to a much safer release window when you're not launching opposite Cyberpunk, right? And everything else that's coming out day one on PS5, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Miles Morales, Demon Souls. So the only thing I'm surprised about is maybe that it stuck around in that launch for so long. But these it's been a long time since we last had a console launch, and you used to see these kind of games come out around console launch because the perceived wisdom was, well, there isn't much else to play, so we'll just put this kind of stuff out on day one and people will buy it because you've got a choice of 10 games, 12 games, and so you're probably going to get some people just picking up this game out of interest. But I think that is an old mentality that doesn't fit 2020. That doesn't fit consoles coming out now with 3,000 games available at launch through back compat. You're not stuck with 12 options to play at launch now. So it's a smart move, and I'm glad that they did it.
I suspect Lucid will be happy as well. But I'm surprised in a way that Sony has allowed this. The fact that it happened so close to the launch of PS5 suggests to me that there was a bit of a fight for it to happen, because otherwise you'd have just made this decision ages ago. It's not like it wouldn't have occurred to Sony, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, didn't All Stars appear in the PS5 UI trailer and things like that as an example of how one of the games would work?
Yeah, and it's on retailer websites. It's launch title £70. You wouldn't go through all that without having to do it. Emma, were you interested in it before? And if not, are you interested in it now?
No and no. Just not into driving games at all. It's just, not really my thing.
So it's more about the kind of game it is rather than
exactly.
Sort of
the only thing I consider probably paying £70 for is Cyberpunk, to be honest. It's and that's not going to be that much. So
well, I appreciate the segue because I wanted to talk about the oh my god, how to describe this game, the behemoth that is Cyberpunk. Having gone gold and having published tweets to say it would not be delayed again, we this week discovered that it will be delayed. Now, this is the next-gen newscast, so we're sort of focusing on next-gen, but this game is a next-gen. This is a next-gen game. I'm sorry.
Well, that's the exact point that they made. The reason it's being delayed is because it's a next-gen game, and they can't get the current-gen consoles to work.
So, Tom, hot off the press, CD Projekt have had a sort of investor call, I guess, to explain what's going on, because it was shocking. I'd say I wasn't expecting this to happen. What have they said exactly in this investor call?
Well, yeah, I was doing my daily handover call to Matt Wales, our evening reporter, as it dropped on Twitter, and I'm told by my wife later on that I've never sounded more excited doing one of those handover calls than when I saw that it happened on Twitter, and I was just like, oh my god, Matt, I cannot believe they've done this, and it's so close to launch. And it's just so unexpected because this is the 4th release date that they've had this year for Cyberpunk 2077. We've had 3 delays now. And as you say, it had gone gold. So like, what are they working on still? And the answer is, now when games go gold, it's not just the version that gets put on a disc and pressed and you buy in a shop. It's then the day one patch that you download after putting that disc in. And
going gold these days just means they've got the certification from console manufacturers, essentially.
Yeah, it's pretty meaningless. I mean, that's why we don't report going gold things anymore, because it's just like, well, this is something that's happened, and then the developers are still in the office the next day making the game. But what happened with Cyberpunk is, as they've said today to investors, that they could launch the PC and next-gen versions fine, and over development, this game has basically, I mean, it's been in development for like a decade. We started reporting on it over a decade ago. Like, they've been talking about it for so long, and it's dropping on the eve of next gen, and it's basically now a next gen game. Every time that we've seen the game at E3 or something like that, it's always been PC code that's running like really high end, and they've never shown the last gen console version. Like, to date, we've never seen it. So there's always been questions about how on earth is this game going to run on current gen, and the answers seem to be with great difficulty. And that's the thing that's the thing that they're working on now. And you could make the argument that maybe they could just like can the current gen version at this point, but they've already taken so many pre-orders, and it's been like the huge user base of those current gen consoles.
That's the thing. They can't leave all that money on the table. I mean, it's going to sell bucket loads, isn't it? Emma, so before we get onto the crunch issue, which we cannot avoid, what platform do you intend to play Cyberpunk on?
PC.
Right, okay.
For sure. Just not even going to mess around with that. It would obviously be fine on like a next gen console. We have a cat visiting.
Tom, your cat's bigger than the PS5. I can't even see you at all.
It's about perspective, small and far away, but yeah, it is also very big. Apologies.
Yeah, so how do you feel about the delay? As someone who wants to play it on PC, what is effectively happening here is the game is getting held up because of current gen.
Yeah, they said that it works on PC fine right now. I'm not too bothered about it. I can understand it. They're doing like a huge number of platforms, and including Stadia as well. At the same time.
Forgot about that.
Imagine if it was Stadia holding up the whole thing.
That really would be.
I love that none of us can say Stadia without all of us just having a little chuckle.
Oh dear, poor Stadia.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's been delayed so many times now. It's almost like at this point, like, what's another like 20 days? They're still trying to get it out before Christmas, which I think is what they really want to do. That's like their priority. And yeah. But I don't know.
I think the delay, I saw like a collective sigh of relief from reviewers across the world, because it gave the big Cyberpunk. It's not just reviewers, to be honest. All games journalists, really, guides writers, any like covering reviews or even just what we do on the news side. It just puts that massive amount of work on our crunch really back a bit. So Cyberpunk has been I think it's fair to say a very controversial project, and it's been dogged by quite grim reports around the making of the game for the actual people doing it, and crunch has become almost inseparable from the conversation about Cyberpunk, I think. And one of the things, like Tom, I remember you pointed this out when the announcement was made, that they did not include, when they said that it was going to be delayed into December, as any mention of crunch, whereas they have talked about it in the past and the impact it was going to have on people working on the game for longer, essentially. And then in the investor call, they did comment on it, and I think we have to talk about this comment, because I don't think it's a great comment personally. It's worth calling out. So just to make sure that we get what they've said right, This is from the boss or the joint boss of CD Projekt, Adam Kaczynski, and he said regarding crunch, actually it's not that bad and never was. Of course, it's a story that has been picked up by the media, and some people have been crunching heavily, but a large part of the team is not crunching at all since they've finished their work. It's mostly about Q&A and engineers, programmers, but it's not that heavy, of course. It will be extended a bit. But we have feedback from the team. They're happy about the extra 3 weeks. So we don't see any threats regarding crunch. Now, I think we need to talk about this statement. Emma, I'll start with you. What was your reaction when you first read that?
Well, it just feels quite dismissive, I think. And also, it kind of has this idea that, like, oh, only some people are crunching. But I don't know, like, that doesn't mean that that department doesn't matter because, like, the rest of the studio isn't crunching. It's like, oh, poor QA and, like, the programmers, like, if they're still going through that, you know, that's still, like, a really valid concern. And often you do find there is QA departments that are put through the worst crunch. So I do wonder, like, how severe it is at the moment, and particularly after they introduced that 6-day work week, whether that's still going. Yeah,
I mean, I bet it is.
Yeah, probably we haven't heard anything to suggest it has stopped. So
yeah, I think it's also worth pointing out that Jason Schreier, who now works for Bloomberg, he tweeted to say that he'd spoken to a CD Projekt team member who had worked more than 100 hours in the past 7 days. Now, that sounds like crunch to me. So it's not like it stopped all of a sudden because the games got delayed. And often when games are delayed, the crunch just continues. Tom, playing devil's advocate here, I am playing devil's advocate. Is he right technically when he says that a large part of the team is not crunching at all since they've finished their work? Is that a valid point for him to make at this stage?
It's accurate. I mean, as far as, I mean, I personally don't know if that's accurate, but if he's saying a large part of the team aren't crunching, then okay. Is it valid for him to say in terms of the conversation around crunch? I think most people would argue that it doesn't matter if, you know, out of your 200-person studio, 200 people are crunching or 50 people are crunching. The fact is that people are crunching. And yeah, as Emma said, it comes across as dismissive. I think personally, it's not a particularly well phrased comment. I would say it's always difficult looking at this stuff when. I mean, it's an answer given off the cuff in an investor Q&A, and I'm well aware that also the
English isn't their first language, right?
English isn't their first language,
Polish.
so I however, this is the statement that they've also put out, and it's the statement that clearly is causing a lot of discussion online today. And well, it should, because crunch is a really, really important issue, something that we keep reporting on and should keep reporting on. And I've seen the argument that a bunch of developers crunch. It's not that uncommon, unfortunately, in the games development industry, and yet it only gets reported on certain games, Rockstar projects, CD projects, and yet it's but like, you need to report on those things because it should not be normalized, whether it's a portion of your studio or every single person in your studio.
Yeah, I mean, crunch, from my conversations with developers, crunch isn't always a black and white issue, but this, like, Cyberpunk just comes across from the outside looking in like it's been mismanaged. Like, to have this many delays, to have this stretch of crunch, this length of crunch, like, it just, I feel like, you know, a game doesn't have to be like this, and it doesn't have to take this kind of toll on the people making it. There has to be a better way, and by reporting on it, by talking about it, is the only way that that's going to change, I think. One way would be to delay the game, like, and not just for 12 weeks. But then, you know, does the crunch just continue until this comes out? Like, you know,
maybe.
Maybe really the decision should have been made a while back to just make this a next-gen game.
I think that,
because this is the problem now, is that they're trying to like go back and make it work on current gen. And if they said a while ago like, no, we're just gonna put it out in 2021, it's just gonna be on next gen and PC. I mean, it would suck because you wouldn't have that install base of like the current gen consoles, but then your team wouldn't be crunching, and hopefully people would have like moved on to some of the next gen consoles by that point. So yeah, I think that was a bad management decision.
I think there's got to be a better way. There just has to be. Anyway, there's going to be a lot more to talk about it. That's for sure. This isn't going away.
Yeah, they do say that this is sort of. I think the argument they're trying to make is that this is like the perfect storm of things, and whatever the next project is, Cyberpunk 2 or Witcher 4, it won't be split across all these console generations. So the exact situation that's happening right now won't happen again. I think they've definitely.
Well, they're probably going to be working on multiplayer next, I imagine.
They are, yeah, already.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, talking about trouble projects, I think it's worth talking about Halo. Halo Infinite this week was also in the news because its director has left the project. This is 343 Industries executive Chris Lee, who hasn't left Microsoft. He's still a Microsoft employee, but he has left Halo Infinite. Now, I think it's fair to say that Halo Infinite is quite clearly a game that's had a troubled development as well. Even taking out the reaction to the gameplay reveal that they had later this year, the whole graphics issues. What was his name again?
Was it Craig?
Craig, the whole Craig meme thing, which to Microsoft's credit they've sort of leaned into. But apart from that, this game has had some high-profile departures, where people have clearly had problems and have just left. And they parachuted in Joe Staten, who has worked on Halo before and Destiny. And it does feel
he should
like
be used to fixing games
exactly.
like the last minute.
Exactly, it does feel like he's like Joe's come in and it's been like, right, you've got to sort this out.
Like,
and
funnily,
now this other guy,
he got taken out of Bungie.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. Anyway, so my question to you is, do you think Halo Infinite is going to be a disaster, Emma?
Oh God. That's such
a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, of course it's a loaded question. I'm a journalist.
That's an interesting question, Wesley.
All right, give yourself a few seconds to think.
Yeah. I think it will be underwhelming, perhaps. But maybe there's a chance that they've seen the initial reaction and are like, now in panic stations, like, okay, we have to sort this. I guess the problem is that if you've got design decisions, again, that were made a long time ago about just how the game is going to work, if it's going to feel a bit more open world and stuff like that, then you can't kind of retroactively go and fix all of that because that's just what it is. So there might be limits to what they can do. So I don't think it's impossible to say. I hope it's not a complete disaster, but yeah, they've got a job on their hands, I think, to convince everyone back to it.
Tom, I put Emma on the spot, so I do apologise for that. You've had a bit longer to think about it, Tom. But yeah, this game comes out, I don't know when, probably March next year or something. Is it going to be a hot mess?
I think it comes out in March. It will be a hot mess. I can't see it coming out in March.
When do you think it will come out?
I think Q4.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think it really needs time. Craig needs more time in the oven. And,
I hope they keep Craig somewhere, like a little Easter egg. Craig.
Yeah, they have to.
Him.
Yeah, that is definitely going to be an Easter egg.
Yeah, make him an achievement or something. Finding Craig in the game. I think it needs a good deal of work. And really, when you miss the launch of the console when Halo was supposed to come out, right? Like there's cardboard boxes for the Xbox Series X with Master Chief's face on the back because these were all printed up expecting that Halo Infinite was going to be a launch title. When you miss that launch, I think, people, there isn't the same like rush to get it out anymore. And I really hope that when they do announce a release date, that it's not another rush. I can't see it being. I think hopefully now that they have delayed it, they'll just take their time with it. Because I mean, it would be a huge shame, and the scope of the project is that it's supposed to be this next Halo that lasts, I guess, Destiny-like for
decade,
years and
right?
years, and they just build on. So that needs to have strong foundations, and it didn't seem like they were in place at all when it was shown over the summer. And I'm sort of astonished that it was shown in that way, and they thought that they could still do it in time. I know they've had issues this year with working from home, as many developers have, and that's absolutely understandable. But there were questions of do they split up the game? Do they release multiplayer separately, campaign later on? Like those aren't questions that you ask 3 months out from launch if a game is like development is progressing smoothly.
Here's my follow-up question. Will they can current gen? Emma.
I don't know if it can run Potato Craig on it, then maybe be fine.
Potato Craig. Oh man.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe they would do what Cyberpunk should have done. Maybe they'll take a lesson from that.
Tom?
I don't think they need to, because Halos always look like us, and so it can just run on anything.
Now. That's just not true now, is it? Fact check.
I think when you're making a game like Halo, speed is important, and if you can get it to hit, what are they trying to get 60 on current, 120 on next, then I don't think they will, is the short answer, because they're making it for PC, which has a million different technical variations anyway. And I think they're trying to still make things for every possible device, so that, what box you play it on really doesn't matter. They will want as many possible people to get on board for multiplayer at launch. And even if it launches Q4 next year, there's still going to be a bunch of people who haven't got next-gen consoles. So that's a huge audience that they'll want to appeal to.
All right. Well, I look forward to doing this all again in a year's time. Hopefully we're all still alive by then. So another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, because I thought it was very interesting, is Bug Snacks. Now, I don't really want to talk about Bug Snacks, the game, but more that it has been announced to be free for PlayStation Plus subscribers next month, but only on PS5 and not on PS4. And I thought that was a very interesting sort of way of doing things. And also, save transfers to PS5 won't work at first, but this will be supported at a later time. And it even has a separate trophy list for each platform. Now, what I think this is interesting, why this is interesting, is because we've had this whole save transfer kerfuffle going on with PS5 for some time now. And what this reinforces, I think, is the idea that PS5 games are just like they are their own thing. And the way that they sort of relate to and communicate with PS4 games or PS4 versions of the same game is very different to the way Xbox has sort of been set up with smart delivery and just other things. Tom, you reported on this story, I think it was. What did you find most interesting about it?
Exactly that, the way that it feeds into the bigger conversation, which is that it's almost like right now, or at the console launch, there are basically 4 different versions of games. There is the Xbox version, which works on Xbox One and Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S, as if they are the same ecosystem, and it might just look slightly different on the telly screen, depending on which of those 3 units you're playing that version of the game on. Then there's the PC version, then there's the PlayStation 4 version, and then there's the PlayStation 5 version. And those PS4 and PS5 versions, they may talk to each other, and you may get an upgrade, and you may be able to use your save, and you may be able to do this and that, but there isn't that same just unifying, it'll work, that Xbox has pushed and PlayStation is a lot more piecemeal. We've talked about this a couple of weeks ago with stuff like Yakuza and developers which, for whatever reason, doesn't seem like they or Sony really want to talk about it. You can't transfer saves over. FIFA is another one. You can transfer some of your saves over or some parts of your progression, but not others. And it looks like Bugsnax, basically, I would wager until this PlayStation Plus deal came around, you weren't going to be able to do that either. And that's why the save transfer stuff is not going to be available at launch. And now suddenly it's in PlayStation Plus and they're like, oh, can we have this please, Sony? And then Sony are like, yes, you can, but also not for 12 days time. So it's coming after launch. And it's just, I mean, it's just another, I wish they would talk about it and why it's not possible. And like, I feel for devs at the end of the day who are people asking for answers, like Codemasters, why won't my save work from one to the other, and for whatever reason they're not able to say, and it's just a shame that it's all sort of all of the reasoning behind this is hidden behind a veil of secrecy, which the news about Bugsnax is another example of. Like, you don't have two different trophy lists if you don't have like two really separate, we call them SKUs, right? Software units. Like, there are two completely separate versions of the game, like an Xbox One and a PlayStation One. Whereas on Xbox, you have one achievements list for the Xbox version of the game, regardless of what, like, if you're playing a 360 game on an Xbox One, same achievement list. If you're playing an Xbox One game on a Series X, same achievement list. So it's just interesting in the way it highlights that different mentality and the way that the two console rival families, companies, are treating next-gen launches.
Yeah, I think my speculative thing is it's about cloud cost, and one company has got all the power in the cloud and another doesn't. But there you go. Emma, you're gonna play Bugsnax when it comes out?
It's just gonna constantly be like, "You gonna play it?" No, I'm not.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Why? How come you hate Bugsnax, huh?
I don't know. It just seems a little bit twee for me. Maybe it'd be all right. I don't know.
One of the other things in that story was that Sony firmed up its PlayStation Plus collection games. This is the new PS4 library. It's created for Plus subscribers, and it's 10 first-party PlayStation games. And I think the list is it has 10 first-party PlayStation games as well as others. And I think the list is pretty good. Am I right in understanding that this is just like if you're subscribed to PlayStation Plus, which you kind of have to be, right? If you want to play PlayStation, you're just going to get these games for your PS5. Bloodborne, Days Gone, Detroit, God of War, Infamous, Ratchet, Last Guardian, Last of Us, Until Dawn, Uncharted 4, Batman, Battlefield, Black Ops 3, Crash Bandicoot, Fallout 4, Final Fantasy 15, Monster Hunter World, Mortal Kombat 10 or 11, Persona 5 and Resident Evil 7. I mean, that's sort of gone under the radar. I think that's pretty amazing, right? I mean, that's we often get accused of going on and on and on about how amazing Game Pass is, and it is amazing. But that's pretty cool as well, right? I mean, that's Emma. Do you think that's that's a generous offer?
That's a good lineup. I'd be pleased with that. Yeah, starting on a next-gen console, having that range of games to play through, and they're definitely ones that I think will show off the PS5 quite nicely as well.
Is it it's not a Game Pass killer though, right?
Probably not. I think it's still decent though. It's not bad at all.
Tom, how come Sony hates the idea of Game Pass so much, huh?
I think they love it, but they're just really behind. They don't have the same. I'm going to say Microsoft pushes Game Pass for a couple of reasons. One is that it's a really unique thing that they sort of didn't realize it was going to be so successful, and it was. And now they're just way ahead of Sony in building out this library. So I really like the PS5 thing. I think it could turn into something great. You're looking at 20 games instead of the Xbox Game Pass is $200. So it's a start. So I don't think they hate it. I think they would love to have that, but it's not what they have been focusing on. And you could argue that it's not really what they've needed to be focusing on, because they have, in my personal opinion, a far stronger lineup of first-party studios, at least up until Microsoft started buying everything else. And so their big thing to sell PlayStation is like, here's Last of Us 2, here's God of War, here's Spider-Man, here's Demon's Souls, and then Xbox is like, well, yeah, we've got some first-party stuff, you might like it, but we've also got Game Pass, which has everything else. So it's just another way that these two platforms differ, and yet Sony clearly sees the value in it, because otherwise, why would they be doing this stuff? It's a nice value thing. I like it. I hope it grows.
Yeah, I think it's gone underreported, I think. But yeah, open your PS5. You kind of have to have Plus. Here's like a whole bunch of PS4 games to play on your PS5. I think it's pretty cool.
Well, they also haven't really talked about how it will run those games. So
won't it just be like you can download them from the store, just like
and
other PlayStation Plus games?
Yeah, and they're PS4 games, so they'll run through back compat.
Yeah,
but they haven't talked about will they look better on PS5? Maybe not. Whereas on Xbox through Game Pass, you've got like optimized versions of these games always.
Yeah, I mean, there are embargoes in place to talk about this stuff. This will all come out. I mean, Digital Foundry will have its fun with all of this. God of War, Sony Santa Monica has said in a sort of tweet that it will run it up to 60 frames per second on PS5, which is pretty cool. I expect, that's going to be the kind of thing that we're looking at, as opposed to like, and you'll get like faster load times by default, I suppose. But I think that's the kind of thing we're looking at, as opposed to like big next-gen updates for a lot of these games. But yeah, I think it's pretty cool, and that's definitely the conversation around what you can do at launch on a PS5 is different when you consider all this. And I think it is worth talking about the PS5 versus the Xbox Series X specifically, in terms of what the reality of what the difference will be in multi-platform games, I think. And I wanted to talk about this because Ubisoft this week, they announced basically how all of their upcoming games are going to run on the next-gen consoles. Watch Dogs Legion, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Immortals Phoenix Rising, Far Cry 6, Riders Republic, someone will have to remind me what that is, Just Dance, Rainbow Six, For Honor. They did a big list and broke it down, how they'll run on Xbox Series X, S, and PS5. And why I think this is interesting is because this is the first time we've seen like a big publisher basically go lay it all out. This is how it's going to actually work in reality on the next gen consoles for a whole heap of games. And I'm looking at what these games are doing on Xbox Series X and what they're doing on PS5. And PS5 has stuff around the triggers, the adaptive triggers. I know that Xbox doesn't really have that, and some 3D audio stuff. But apart from that, they're basically the same. Ray tracing, faster load times, 60 FPS at 4K on most of them. HDR across both on some of them. Like when you're talking about like actual frame rate, resolution, performance, it's looking pretty similar across Xbox Series X and PS5. And if we cast our minds back to PS4 versus Xbox One, there was a huge difference. It was all that anyone talked about. It was how much worse Xbox One games performed compared to PS4 games. In fact, it was pretty much the reason, not the only reason, but one of the big reasons the Xbox One, I think, flopped. But this time around, we're not seeing a meaningful difference, I don't think. I think it's fair to say they're going to be just about the same. Now, my question is, do you think that this isn't going to be an sort of isolated issue to what Ubisoft is seeing, or do you think this is going to play out over the course of this generation? Do you think that we are essentially going to see parity between these two consoles, but when it comes to big third-party games? Tom, I'll ask you first.
It's hard to say because, well, we really don't know who the market leader is going to. I mean, it's going to be Sony, but you know, it remains to be seen exactly how much developers want to push their Xbox Series X versions of third-party games beyond what it's expected. The vast majority of, well, not the vast majority, but the majority of people, it's expected this console generation, at least to start with, we're playing on PlayStation 5 over Xbox Series X. And so that remains to be seen. And it's also remains to be seen how much these launch titles, essentially like coming out the first couple of months of the new console's existence, really take advantage of everything they have to offer anyway. You know, these are just really early examples of games which are also coming out on cross-gen, let's not forget, and current consoles. I think we'll get a better view next year when we're starting to see big third-party games that don't have PS4 and Xbox One versions, that are just made for next-gen, and developers have that time where they're not building out like 5 versions of the same game. They're just working on PC and next-gen, that they can maybe tweak individual consoles to run better than others. I mean, yeah, I'd hope that is the case down the line. I'm looking forward to seeing Digital Foundry's microscope put over those ones more than I am the ones at console launch, because I think like their console launch games, they run better than the current consoles, and that's basically what you're expecting for the first Christmas.
Emma, if we're saying that most multi-platform games are going to run basically the same on Xbox and PlayStation, then what for you is the key differentiating factor? What pushes you to want to play one on one over the other?
Well, I guess it's really because the hardware is pretty much equal. This really is what's putting the focus on like how they offer you software and like the deals you get for like the games that you want and like what suits you best, I guess. Because like, yeah, if you want the exclusives and the single player experience, obviously you want to go for Sony and PS5. And if you want kind of like, I guess like multiplayer games and like a really wide breadth of stuff that you can just like dip into, then Game Pass is great. So it's going to come down to personal choice on that, I guess. And I also think that Sony has a lot of the momentum coming from PS4 rolling into PS5. A lot of people behind it because it's had a really good generation for single player games that are kind of like prestige titles. So yeah, maybe it will get a bit spicier like further along in the generation. At the moment, I think it is just a kind of competition for who can offer the best deals for software at the start.
It's amazing. The battleground is deals.
Yeah,
it's not frame rate resolution. Yeah,
yeah.
It's value, isn't it? It's what's perceived value, because they both cost the same as well, right?
Exactly.
Both £450, which I still think is cheap for both of them, and so the value that you get from how you're able to get games is the next gen battle. I mean, yeah, exclusives matter, like you say. There's going to be stuff from PlayStation that you're just not going to get on Xbox that people care about. Miles Morales, I'm sure people will really keen to play that game on PS5, and you can't play that on Xbox. But it's just funny to me because I remember 7 years ago when like 720p was like the like things were basically getting slagged off for being 720p on Xbox. Sometimes worse, I think it was on Xbox One. It wasn't even that. And all the comparison videos which really showing it up, it was really, really bad. I think Phil Spencer has been very keen to take that whole equation out of the discourse this time around. I bet when they were talking about what they were going to do, it was essentially, we're just going to make sure that that never happens again, because it was such a terrible thing for them. And, you know, it looks like they've achieved that goal. So fair play to them to do now. So I won't keep you guys any longer, but I will say this, now that we've had another week to think about it, has your what I'm going to play on my next-gen console first answer changed in any meaningful way? Or are you still looking at playing this? Well, I can't. What are you actually going to play as soon as you can? I mean, you've got an Xbox Series S anyway,
Yeah,
haven't you? So,
well, I did think about Sekiro, but I might just like browse through Game Pass and just kind of see what's on there and try a few things, I guess. But I'll have a look at, depending on like what I'm allowed to play on the console at the moment. So I need to go through that list and have a look.
yeah, Sekiro at 60 FPS is a pretty exciting prospect. Tom, you're getting Xbox Series X, aren't you? If I recall correctly.
Yeah. What am I going to play first? I'm going to annoy you and say Fortnite.
Are you really?
Oh no.
I think by that, so I hope by that point I am basically done on Assassin's Creed Valhalla.
Right.
So it will be playing that on next gen. I hope to be able to play it a bit on both, but as soon as my proper home next gen console comes along, I think that's probably what I'll be playing still. I'm still playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey now, so a bit more of that.
Not a next gen exclusive in sight. I love it.
Not on Xbox, no.
No. All right, guys. Well, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate it. If people want to follow you on Twitter, Emma, where should they head?
At GoneEFK.
And Tom, for you?
It's at Tom Phillips EG.
And I'm at WYP100. Thanks very much, guys. Bye.
Bye.